Okay, let's move on. We need to collapse this a little bit because we have managed to squeeze an extra thing in this morning, and I don't want to make you miss out on lunch. I mean, we know what the important things are. So let's move on. A big question that we need to ask ourselves as a school is, why are we doing this? Why do we need to evaluate ourselves? And there are lots of different answers that can come from that. And it could just be because Mr. Kusuri the other day said, well, we're going to look at self-evaluation. We're looking at school evaluation. We're setting up a system of school evaluation. So it could be the last one. Well, we have to. Now that's probably not the best starting point for getting something done. The second last answer, to raise standards. But is that your reason for doing it or his reason for doing it? It's your reason for doing it, so it's your school that wants to raise standards. Which of the other ones might be important? To enhance student learning. And if we enhance student learning, do we raise standards anyway? As a preparation for inspection. There are all these different reasons why self-evaluation is impacting in different parts of the world. Some people want to do it, other people have to do it. And the issue is, if you want to do it, you will do it so much better. Because it tells you about yourself. It tells you about how well I'm doing in my classroom, as well as how well we're doing in our school. So, and I mean, these are the nuts and bolts thing, and I don't want to spend any real time on them because you can read them and understand what they're doing. But if you look at these different elements of self-evaluation, we need to know what the purpose of it is. We need to know who we're giving the information to. Is this for parents, or is this for Beacon schools, or is it for the government? And that's a different thing that you need to do each time. What is the best structure of doing things? What are the criteria that we'll use to make judgments about how well we're doing? What do we do? How do we actually go through a school self-evaluation? What are the things we need to physically do, one after the other, in order to get this done? What are the tools that we can use to get the job done? And what is the final product going to be? Is it going to be a one-page? Is it going to be a 57-page document? Is it going to be a flyer that you will use? It depends on the questions that you ask and what your reasons are for doing it in the first place. So, it's a question of purpose. Whoops, I've gone backwards. Let's go the other way. Process. What is self-evaluation? What are the key steps? Well, first of all, we have to determine what is good practice. What is it we would like to see wherever possible? And sometimes this involves using the research, using the literature, finding out what other schools do. We need to gather reliable data. Are the information, the results that you collect now, is it reliable? Is it something that would happen again if we did it next week? Or is it variable? And does it actually tell us what we need to know? That's the other bit of reliability. How do we look at this? And I think this is one of the areas that teachers are not very skilled at. They're able to look at very small pieces of information about individual students. But once you start collecting data together as a whole class, or in fact as a whole school, the ability to analyse it becomes more intensive. The way in which you interpret things becomes more important because it's supposed to tell you what to do next as well as where you are. You need to be able to reach valid conclusions from what's being done. And the conclusions need to identify strategies. Now, of course, you're doing this every day in your classroom for a specific thing, for mathematics or for reading or something else. What we're now talking about is the whole school, and how do we make interpretations about how the school is going in total rather than in your individual classroom. And then what do we need to do to improve things next? You will have all looked at different tools for self-evaluation. What is the sort of information that you could collect in order to give you the information you need to make a decision? And there's a variety of ways that we can look at that. And there's probably another 30 or 40 different ways that we can collect information as well. So determining what type of information we're collecting is very, very important. So, what are some of the areas? Well, teaching and learning is obviously a major area. If we're going to evaluate the health of the school, teaching and learning is a central component. So what we're looking at here are a number of questions or a number of issues associated with that. Student engagement. We heard Richard this morning talk about how important engagement is, how important it is that students are interested in learning what they're doing. The quality of the learning experiences. Are we setting up the circumstances for students to learn and to learn well and to demonstrate their learning? That's the other part of that. Being able to demonstrate your learning is very important. And then the quality of the climate in the classroom. I mentioned this morning two groups of teachers, the askers and the tellers. Now, if you can think of the classroom climate where people are always being told what to do, they're being shown the answers, they're being shown the techniques, rather than asking questions. And then you go to another classroom where the teacher is always asking questions. And if the students don't have the right answer, the teacher's response is, I couldn't have asked the right question. I need to ask it in a different way. Now, many of you will know the Socratic method. You go back to first year philosophy of education, Socrates, and you see the way in which he guides people to answers. The argument that he would make is the answer is in there somewhere. We just have to find it. And we find it through the questions we ask. So, these are the big questions. Fairly simple questions in a lot of respects. How well are we doing? Can you answer that? You might be able to answer that in your classroom. Can you answer it for your school? How well is your school doing? Do you know how well all of your colleagues are doing? The second question is really important. How well should we be doing, given the circumstances under which we work? And what this is suggesting is that we do need to take into account the conditions and the criteria within a particular school. We cannot ignore what's going on within the school. The third question is, how do we know? What's this? Revised schedule. 1:30 lunch. Hey? Oh, okay, so I don't need to do this. We've got the discussion groups from 11:50 to 1:30. So we finish at 1:30. Okay. And what do we need to do next? Some of the questions we could ask. I want you to just think about that. If you were asked about your school right now, how would you answer these questions? I want you to think of your own school. How would you answer those questions? What outcomes has the school achieved? So think of the last year. What are the major outcomes that your school has achieved? How well does it meet the needs of the community? How happy are your parents about being involved? How good is the education it provides? Because people can be very successful if we have very low standards. We can have everybody successful, but they haven't learned much at all. So how good is the education? How good is the management of your school? Do you feel that the school is moving along in an appropriate way? How good is the leadership of the school? Now, what's the difference between management and leadership?
Management is a group of people who can be under one leadership.
Sorry, again?
Management is a group of people who can be under one leadership.
Right.
Leadership is the person who steers the whole organization forward.
Is that the manager or the leader?
Manager functions and leader leads.
Okay.
So leaders can be managers and leaders both, but it is not necessary that every manager has the qualities of the leader.
Did you notice the question that I've asked? No.
Well, the management is,
No, the next one.
and how good is the leadership of the school?
I didn't say how good is the leader. Okay.
Can do the management as well.
You had a comment, sir?
The manager manages the affairs. The leadership has got to have the capacity of management plus the motivation. The
Okay.
leadership inspires. The leadership leads.
Okay.
So the leadership is far more comprehensive an attribute as compared to the manager.
Okay, thank you.
Management follows. The leaders can have a vision.
Just rather than call out, just have a minute talking to on your own table. What is the difference between management and leadership? Just 1 minute. Just have a quick conversation. Management and leadership.